G'day everyone, I'm Smokescreen and welcome to another video from Nurburgring Nordschleife. So we continue our race in the Suzuki Swift. Of course, this was actually quite a good race, but there wasn't enough time in the previous video to include this race also, so I thought, you know what, I'll just leave it unedited as its own video. And here it is. So I wanted to actually have a good race this time. I wanted to be near the front and try and win, because you know the type of novelty sort of combination this is a 1 make N100 around Nordschleife. I did want to try and win it. So it's a good race, I will tell you that much, but I won't tell you the result. You'll see that in about 20 minutes time. But the main rival is me and the guy ahead, Glaive _XX. We'll just refer to him as Glaive. Now, the only real race in this video is between me and Glaive. We, as a pair, sort of separate from the rest of the pack quite quickly. But the race between the pair of us is interesting enough and goes for, you know, long enough of the whole race to have its own video. And you see going down into that left-hander into the right-hander while braking downhill. I actually nearly lost the rear of the car there. So, of course, the Suzuki Swift Sport, it's a front-wheel drive car, front-engine front-wheel drive, known as FF sort of layout, I guess it's called, FF layout. The rear end is actually really light on this car. Not much power, but the sort of being quick relies on carrying your momentum. So you see already we're 2.3 seconds ahead of the guy in third, and that's it. It never gets any smaller, I'll tell you that much. So we're about 2 seconds behind Glaive at the moment as we go onto the Schwedenkreuz straight, which isn't really straight at all. It's got a couple of left-hand kinks, as well as the very difficult uphill over a crest left-hander at the end of the straight, which is at pretty much the top speed that this car can reach. So basically just keep an eye on the gap between me and Glaive, and that is the race there. So this is that left-hander. You can just see the car just lifts up, the suspension just extends out as we go over that crest, and it's frightening to go through there. And we just dip a couple of wheels onto the grass into the braking zone for Arenberg, the Arenberg right-hander, but we managed to get the car pulled up in time. So through there we were just over 2 seconds behind Glaive, but just after Arenberg we're 1.9 seconds behind. So we just caught up a little bit of time going through that particular portion of the track. And then this is another scary corner, uphill left-hander over a crest. You just see the suspension extend out again as the wheels drop down as the weight of the car lifts going over the crest as we go through the Adenauer forced chicane at the moment. So you see I take more of a racing line through the final right-hander, but it doesn't really yield me that much. We are 1.8 seconds behind Glaive at the moment. We were 1.9 seconds before, but we didn't catch up all that time through the chicane there. It was a little bit to do with the exit from Arenberg onto the little bit of a straight before there. But going into Metzgersfeld, you see Glaive has just binned it onto the grass, so he's just broken a little bit too late, and we just sail around the outside and have a look at that gap as we go break downhill into the right-hander of Kallenhard. Just a little bit of a slide and twitch through there, but the car sort of settles itself down as those front wheels sort of pull it back in line. 1.1 seconds ahead of Glaive at the moment. So the focus is now into a defensive race, keeping position, just making my marks and not making mistakes, as well as monitoring that gap and making sure he's not actually getting any closer. So into Wursthofen now. We actually go a little bit deep, so you really want to hug that apex, get about half of the car up onto the curb, and really get a good exit off there. And we actually get quite an average exit, actually about just under 9/10 ahead of Glaive at the moment. The left-hander here, you want to get about half the car up onto that platform, not the whole car, as you get a penalty. This right-hander is flat out, but we get a little bit of a lift going in, as if you go through it flat out and steer, you're actually on full right lock, you get a lot of wheel spin, don't get a great exit. So a little bit of a lift, and then sort of shallow out your steering to get a nice run onto there. So a little bit of straight, and then we go into the tight right-hander of Bergwerk. You see how wide the entry is. You see where that quarter marker is and how late you turn in. 2 quarter markers there. There's camber on the inside. Really get the car around there. And through that corner is actually quite strong through that corner through the whole week of this race, actually. And we gain a few tenths on Glaive at the moment. So of course this is race C for this week, so front-engined, like FF layout car, the Suzuki is, as I mentioned before. You'll eventually start to see uneven tyre wear, but there's absolutely no strategy in this race at all. It's simply a 2-lap dash of Nurburgring Nordschleife. There is tyre wear and fuel use, but they're pretty much negligible and pretty much have no difference at all on the course of the race. Of course, absolutely no pit stop needed. You only use about half a tank really for the entire race, and the tyres only go down marginally. Yeah, but that's it for the strategy, or lack thereof. But as we go into the braking zone for the tight right-hander, coming up just after this little kink here, you just see the gap between me and Glaive 1.6 seconds ahead. So we brake just before the quarter marker and get a nice line through here. We actually go a little bit wide. You see the actual meat of the corner, if you will, is quite tight, but then the exit is quite wide. So you always feel like you're not quite maximising it, but there's nothing you can do. Carousel now, you really want to keep into that Canberra carousel, and we just fall out of the top of it, fall out of the carousel, and it really inhibits the ability to get on the power, as the car just wants to understeer once you reach the top of there. So 1.1 seconds ahead of Glaive. We're actually 1.6 or 7 seconds, 1.6 or 1.7 seconds ahead of him going into the carousel, and coming out 1.1 seconds behind. So now we're on to the sort of last third of the lap now at the moment. This is a good section. It's nice and twisty, and you can get a good flow if you get your rhythm up through this section here. And you can just have a look while I go through it. You can just see the corners flow on from one another. There's a lot of left right transitions. You can see there's one there, left going into a right, a little bit downhill here, and then there's a dip at the bottom, and it goes uphill into a right-hander over a crest. So Nurburgring has a lot of corners over a crest to try and catch you out. And of course the road car doesn't quite have the brakes that a race car has, but of course since you're not going as fast as a race car, you can pretty much brake at the same points you would on a race car, except you probably have to brake for more corners than you do in a race car because of the lack of downforce. And going into the first right-hander, so there was a right-hander followed by that right-hander. You just get a little bit up onto the curb too much, get half a second of penalties, turn in way too early for that left-hander, and get a poor line up onto the grass on the exit there. And you can see Glaive just slips through that gap there, so he just got a little bit of an overlap, and I had to give him space there. I couldn't just run him off. That's not how you race. Jump down the dip, a little bit of braking to keep the car on the inside, but we don't quite do that. We get a little bit on the gravel, and that just sort of stops my gaining on Glaive there as we go down this dip here. This is actually quite steep. Didn't realise how steep that was before. So Glaive, he's a good racer. You can see we're having a good little battle here, and about 13 seconds ahead of the guy in third. Oh well. But I can sense that he's probably not quite as consistent as he is fast. So you saw that mistake going into the Metzgersfeld on this lap. That's how I got ahead of him in the first place. So I'm just going to wait for him to make another similar mistake like that. Going into the Klein's Carousel, we get a good run through there. That's the final sort of brake accelerate before the main straight, is the right-hander before the straight is flat out. So you've got to get a good run off of that corner. Not this one. You just keep it flat out through there, and you carry your speed from the exit of Klein's Carousel. Going onto the straight, side by side as we exit the straight, got to keep it nice and narrow, no contact through there, but of course I have a half second of penalty, and you can see exactly how much time I'm going to lose by the course of the end of the straight here. So we're going to stick in his slipstream as closely as possible, even though he's swerving a little bit to try and break the toe, so he goes back over to the right hand side of the track, and I do suspect he'll go back over to the left hand side of the track. He does indeed. So of course, while they're swerving, it's quite hard to stick in their slipstream, but he is doing a good job, I would say, to try and minimise my slipstream that I'm getting from his car there. But you can see we're about over halfway down the straight, just before the left-hand kink, which is under the bridge coming up. We are 1.5 seconds behind of Glaive, sorry. And at the start of the straight, we were side by side. So you see how much half a second, it's not really half a second penalty, it's a 1.6 second penalty right now as we speak. It's soon to be a 1.7 penalty. And as we go into the S's at the end of the straight, this is got to brake as late as possible. You're braking just before this left-hander, braking all the way through the left-hander, hard on the brakes, downshift into third, and then throw it into the right-hander. We're a little bit wide, get half the car up onto that grass, but that's okay because you've got to use this apron there to get a good run through the final right-hander of the lap. and that is a lap of Nurburgring Nordschleife. And as we cross the line, see if we can get a good run through turn 1, probably turned in a little bit early, not able to get on the power quite as early, but we managed to just keep 2 wheels on the sort of concrete part on the top of the curb, and that avoids us a penalty. Of course, if we went all the way under the grass, it probably would have been about half a second, and that would have eliminated any chance of getting a victory here. So if you have a look, Glaive just loses the rear going downhill into that left-hander, so that's where I nearly lost it on the opening lap, and he has actually gone one step further and actually lost it. So a little flash of the hazards to thank him for his troubles, and we're up into first place, 1.1 seconds behind. So this is a similar story to the previous lap, so the race is now once again a defensive race, or just keeping an eye on that gap and trying to go as quickly as possible so he doesn't gain it back in. Now, I can sense that he was stronger through the latter third of that lap, the twisty section after the carousel, into the straight, although the straight were fairly even, obviously, as you're just going in a straight line. But because of that, I wanted to get a good run through the first couple of thirds of the lap at the moment. So this is that Schwedenkraut's straight, which isn't straight. So you just keep an eye on that gap through here. He's probably getting a little bit of slipstream, but not much. It's definitely not going to be enough to go for an overtake into Arenberg. Yeah, so the strongest part of the track for me, I think, is the sort of the top part, the second third of the lap, if you will. Of course, I'm basing off going north, and then we go east, and then we go sort of south, and then southwest at the end of the lap. Based on the map in the right hand corner of the top of the screen. Of course, the map is orientated so that the very top is directly north. So as we cross the line before, though, you can just have a look at the fastest lap. So Glaive managed to cross the line in 9 minutes 21 seconds, 0.489 of a second, and I did it in 9 minutes 22.942 of a second. So the difference is around 1.5, about 1.5 seconds, I would say. It's a rough estimation there, and by the end of that straight I was 1.7 seconds behind, thanks to a penalty of half a second at the beginning of the straight. So we were side by side, and then I lost the 1.7 seconds, and you can see that's translated into Glaive having the fastest lap for the rest of this lap here. But going through there while I was just talking, the gap has actually remained pretty much exactly the same, about 9 tenths. Let's see how long it remains at 9 tenths before as we break into that left-hander where Glaive made his mistake last lap, but I think he manages to get through there nicely this time. He actually gets through there better than me. As you can see, he's gaining time. We get a better run through Callenhard that time. The last lap we had a massive twitch halfway through the corner trying to get onto the power, but we get through there nicely this time. Going down into the S's now. This is that nice right-hander there. It's triple apex. There was the first one, there's the second one, there's the third one, there's the exit apex on the left-hand side, and we go into a siphon now. Let's see if we can get a better run than last time. You remember we went a little bit deep last time. That's a good run through there. Keep it nice and tight, and then accelerate out. Second gear corner. Have a look at the gap to Glaive there. I think he actually gets a better exit than me. He does. He's 7 tenths behind and gaining, and let's see if we can catch out a few more tenths going before the carousel, as that's where I feel like Glaive is faster than me. So let's go through this uphill right-hander. I think I was pretty strong at this corner compared to my competitors this week, so we were pretty much 6 tenths ahead of Glaive, and after that you can see we're 8 tenths now, 9 tenths now. We're probably going to be a second ahead of Glaive shortly as we go into the sort of tight right-hander of Bergwerk. So Bergwerk has that sort of camber on the very inside of the corner. Nice wide entry. Here it is. Double, well, not really double apex, but double corner marker corner. You can just sort of, you can feel that camber there, and it can really help the car around. I was strong through that corner as well. 1.1 seconds ahead of Glaive at the moment, 1.2 seconds ahead of Glaive. We post a purple sector, 9.2 seconds up on a 9:21.4, and let's see if we can translate that into a victory and a fastest lap at the end of the race. So of course, because I got a good exit from Bergwerk, I'm gaining all the way down the straight, 1.3 seconds ahead of Glaive right now. We're about halfway down the straight at the moment, so the livery that I'm using, Pizza Hut Rapid Delivery Team, I'm living up to the name. Everyone's going to get their pizzas on time today, not like a last video. Hopefully we don't. Hopefully Glaive doesn't turn on us and gives a massive punt going into the carousel. That would be quite funny for, I don't know, entertainment purposes. Wouldn't be funny for me, but anyway. So this is the last part of the lap now, the busy part of the circuit. It's a good part of the circuit. I do like the Nurburgring Nordschleife, I like the flow that it has. Of course, it's the second longest track in the game, the longest track being Nurburgring 24 hour, which of course includes the GP loop at the bottom of the track. But we just cut across the top of that for Nordschleife there. 1.3 seconds ahead of Glaive going into the twisty section now. So this is where I feel like Glaive is actually better than me through this third of the lap. So we'll see how much time he gains through there. We get a nice run through the carousel. Just feather the throttle a little bit, but you can just see how much time we actually streak out from there. We were 1.1 seconds ahead of Glaive going into the carousel, and we're now 2 seconds ahead. We're pretty much going to be 2.1 seconds ahead shortly. You can see we gain a full second by getting the carousel correct this time, so 2.1, pretty much 2.2 seconds ahead of Glaive at the moment at the start of the twisty section. So it's always good to have that barrier before the straight. You want to be, look, you can kind of get away with being 8 tenths behind, or 8 tenths ahead, and then not slipstreaming past you by the end of the straight, but I really want it to be above a second to be really safe. So we're 2.1 seconds behind. We can actually afford to lose about 1.2 seconds at the moment and still manage to retain the lead. It's quite hard to overtake. You got to overtake going down the straight. You can't overtake at the end of the straight. That's very hard to do just because of the nature of a left-hander, right-hander, left-hander, right-hander. There's no real overtaking opportunity at the bottom of that straight. So you got to get it done going down the straight. So that's why it's so important to have that slipstream. And of course, we get a really nice gliding line through there, 1.7 seconds behind. This is YouTube corner, so if you have a look at any video of sort of Nurburgring Nordschleife accidents, it's going to be at that corner. A lot of cars end up in that gravel trap, but we don't this time. Turn in a little bit better for this corner. Remember, we went wide here before with the penalty from going too early a couple of corners earlier, but we managed to get through this section of the lap cleanly. Now 1.6 seconds behind of Glaive. He's actually caught up a few tenths going through this section now, as suspected. Let's see if we can get this corner correct now. Throw it in on the power, don't touch the gravel. That was a nice corner there, pretty much 1.6 seconds ahead. Let's see if we can keep this gap. The twisty section is done. So the main sort of sharp corners of that twisty section is done. It's mainly just flowing corners from here to the end. Now, the actual final corner before that straight is flat out. So where you gain your time down the straight is actually into the acceleration zone coming out of Klein's carousel, which is the left-hander before that right-hander. So we're going to go up the hill now. We brake a little bit early for there, 1.2 seconds ahead of Glaive. We actually get a poor run through that left-hander as well. So the car didn't really want to go and sort of twitched under brake, and that's Klein's carousel. Don't get a great run through there, just going a little bit too hot, and we managed to touch the grass on the outside. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's where you have to get a good exit to get a yield down the straight. You can see through this right-hander, that camber on the entry to the corner really helps the car stay flat out through here as it is. Now, we're going to go down the straight now. He's 7 tenths behind. He's probably going to be in slipstream, and he's gaining by virtue of getting a better exit through the Klein's carousel. Let's see if he can translate that into a victory. So it's been a good battle between me and Glaive, and of course, even if I do manage to drop into second place, I'm happy to take second in this instance here, as I'm always happy to lose a race. That's a good one. Of course, I'm right over to the left-hand side of the track. Of course, cars don't want to follow you right to the side of the track, as they'll start to dip wheels onto the grass and lose time. As we just look behind there, you see Glaive is remaining only about half in the slipstream, but he's right in the slipstream as I begin to move over to the right-hand side and attempt to defend, but he manages to get the momentum and just squeeze through the gap before I close it off to him. Now, I'm allowed to move across like that, but I'm not allowed to block, so if he was right behind and I just swerved suddenly, that's not allowed. But he manages to just slide in ahead, so that's what I mean. You can just see I'm going to brake later than him going into the right-hander. You can see there's a little bit of an overtaking opportunity there if he went wide, but we managed to just bin it onto the grass. But we keep it onto the track, penalty-free, get a nice run through the right-hander, but it's not going to be enough to get to the lead. So that's where we finish in second place. Now, good on Glaive, actually. We only finished 4 tenths behind. Of course, if I didn't have that penalty, I probably would have won, but nevertheless, we get a good run anyway. So I'm happy to lose a race or get not first if I'm battling for first, and it's a good battle. He drove well, hit his marks, albeit a couple of mistakes, but I made my fair share of mistakes as well. So I'm happy to keep second place there. But that is where we're going to leave that video today. You can just see, actually, 18 seconds behind, ahead of the guy in third. So we had a good run up the front, the pair of us there. But that's the end of the video today, and that means that's going to be it from me. I do thank you for getting this far into the video. It means a lot that you like to watch to the end, and I do urge you to hit that like button to let me know you enjoyed. Also hit subscribe if you'd like to see videos like this in your subscription box every week. But that's going to be the end of the video, and that means that is it from me. Once again, I do thank you very much for watching. See you later.